What up, team? It is MurderInc. We have a banger of a build. This mid-game build for Barbarian is going to change so much for Season 3 if you're not already doing it and this build does interest you, so stay tuned for that. Alright guys, as mentioned, we're talking about a Hellfire charge mid-game build here. So we're going to be using Upheaval, and I know people don't like Upheaval, but give it a chance for when you see what I'm about to show you. So first, I tried this low levels. You can see my dopamine runnels on the screen here, starting off pretty low, but it's pretty consistent across the way. It just gets better as you keep going, and even the low level clears are really impressive, which is why I kind of started going with this idea in this direction based off of the first AoE farming, and it's surprisingly faster than last season. So if you just want to copy the build planner, it's in the pinned comment below. Head on over to that. But there are a few things you want to know about this build that may not be as clear as the build planner does provide, which is why I'm going to spend the first, minute giving you all the information you need, then you can kind of head off on your own. So the first thing is going to be, why is it called Hellfire, right? Where's the fire coming from? And some people might think this is weird and it's a waste, but trust me, you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. Aspect of Burning Rage. While burning, you deal fire damage every second to surrounding enemies, and Brawler's aspect. Enemies damaged by a kick or charge will explode if they are killed within the next 2 seconds. You're killing everything but bosses in one shot, sometimes bosses in one shot with charge. So this explosion damage and the burning damage gives stacks of a very important upheaval passive called Furious Upheaval. As we can see, dealing direct damage to an enemy with that skill that is not upheaval causes your next cast to deal 12% multiplicative increased damage that stacks up to 6 times. So that's a crazy multiplier. Now, when you add what I added in this build, the aspects of Burning Rage and Brawler's aspects, you are constantly at 6 stacks. So when you pop, as we can see from this further on clip, everything together, you are spamming Upheaval, and depending on how much attack speed you have, you can get from 4 to 6 stacks, or if you don't have a ton of attack speed, you're pretty much always going to have 6 stacks, pretty much clearing everything. Right? This is not only helpful for AoE farming, but also bossing. You really want those stacks quickly, and as fun as it is to spam Lunging Strike over and over again, not ideal, right? You want those stacks quickly, so you're getting the most benefit out of Upheaval. Honestly, it's pretty smooth with the attack speed you do get from the Paragon board and Call of the Ancients with that 20% attack speed bonus. So that's the first thing you need to know about the guide outside of the guide, if that makes sense. The next thing is the Paragon board. I did something that I can't believe I didn't figure out earlier. You don't have to follow what I'm doing here. It's ambitious for sure. Once you see it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So what I did was I said, forget glyphs. Right? Glyphs are very strong once you start getting them to the increased radius. As we can see on the mobilytics, it's showing you the maximum radius, of course, but we all know it doesn't start that way. Leveling glyphs does take a while, so I thought to myself in a brief epiphany moment, why would I waste time getting glyphs when I can just rush the keystone nodes? So that's exactly what I did, and the results were crazy. This probably should change things for a lot of players through every single class. Maybe I'll make a separate video on this because it's such a big point here. But I skipped the first glyph. I just went 1 point all the way up until I got Blood Rage. This was a massive for leveling, and I got it, I want to say 3 levels quicker by not messing around in the Martial glyph. So what you want to do is you want to pretty much head up to the first glyph slot and just take 1 point all the way and just pass it. Forget all of the extra stuff. You don't need the armor. You don't need any of that good stuff. Just head straight up to Blood Rage. After that, we want to head straight to Carnage. More attack speed makes Upheaval feel so much better. And we're getting a boosted crit rate from our Seneschal pet, which I can go over a little bit later here. Once I got to Carnage, then I realized, okay, I've been playing for long enough, I've gotten a decent amount of glyphs, let's see which one's going to help me the most. That's where Martial comes in. Martial is incredible for this build because it pretty much gives you a free reset on charge in case you don't hit enough units. And it may sound small and like a waste, but it's actually massive for how fast you do want to go. So once I got the Martial glyph, the reason I picked Martial as strength is pretty easy for this. The rest willpower, dexterity. A lot of it requires expanded radius, which we don't really want to mess with. So I put martial here, then I filled it in afterwards. So after I made it all the way to the 3rd Paragon board, then I started filling out this glyph to get the effect instantly. After I did that, I progressed to the Brawl glyph where I added this in. We're getting a ton of berserking damage, which is going to benefit you early on because we did rush the Blood Rage node. After this, you get to pick. I love Bonebreaker, especially for upheaval and charge. They can both. It can be a little bit weird proccing the overpower on a random skill, but I wouldn't worry about it too much because you will find out that you're rarely using Lunging Strike and the rest of the damaging abilities outside of the hard-hitting ones as it is. So if you decide you don't want Bonebreaker, you can actually head straight up and slot in Ire, which is considered our best in slot glyph because it's straight up multiplicative damage and you can stack it very high. And to do that, I did in fact pick the Hemorrhage tree just because it's very close to the glyph and we really want to utilize bleeding in this build. So we're getting a massive multiplier here if you elect to do it either before or after Bonebreaker, and we also have bleeding synergy if we head back to the build planner. Skills and energy, I have the sword technique. Now I'm currently using a sword so I don't need this, but if you're not using a sword for upheaval or anything else, you want the two-handed sword technique so things start bleeding. You don't have to waste an aspect on Berserk Ripping. The bleed's going to be worth it in the end. So that kind of covers the Paragon board. Why I didn't finish it is because there are no good mid-game builds like this that can be translated straight to endgame because we're in different spots of the game. If you gave me every single Paragon point, it would look nothing like the Paragon board you see in front of you. But I want to min-max where players are in this game, so they're struggling as little as possible in the duration of it. So everything else is pretty self-explanatory. We have Unconstrained. We pretty much have 100% Berserking uptime because every time we use Charge is connected to this here, Battle Fervor, so 3 seconds of charge every time you damage an enemy with charge, including the last hit, which is all that really matters. So you get 3 seconds from the first hit, and the timer stops on the last hit here. And again, if you hit the max amount of mobs, it's a 0 to a 2 second cooldown of charge. If you miss everything, the cooldown is what? 13.6 seconds, assuming you have no cooldown on gear. That's why Martial's so strong. You just pop your shout afterwards, which is going to take some getting used to, and we can kind of talk about the gameplay a little bit here. But Rallying Cry, we don't need a ton of Fury in this build. The reason why we have Ground Stomp is to get that extra 40 Fury on demand, and we have a few multipliers that deal increased damage to stunned targets through our skill tree, of course. So Ground Stomp, all of this, my point in making this build is to make sure your Fury's perfect, you're clearing things quickly, you're doing a ton of damage, and you can survive everything. So I hit all of those bases here, and it's going to come down to how you enjoy the build, right? Because that's what it really matters in the end. As far as the Seneschal construct, again, separate video for sure that I'm just going to talk about this, but the pet's so OP. I've seen people saying, oh, the pet's kind of stupid for this season. They're just wrong, or they're not using it right. Reconstruct is overpowered. It's an amazing heal. Adding Safeguard, Duration, and Tactical just makes it so much better. These are the ones I'm currently using besides Tactical and Duration. I don't have those two. I have the rest and I'm dominating. The next one, Impale. It's a legendary drop. I got it from farming. You can use any damage dealing Governing Stone in place of Impale, but you want Fortify support, Swift support, and Efficiency support for sure here. So as we can see here, gaining crit chance is crazy on hit. Gaining an attack speed bonus is also crazy on hit. Having them attack faster, also an amazing thing to have, but the main one is going to be Fortify support. When the construct uses this skill, you're going to gain Fortify. Now, once we start watching some of my more up-to-date dopamine tunnel runs, because I'm currently level 60, I wanted to be further, but I had to call it early on the season launch night to get some sleep. But I can get full Fortify after about 30 seconds of combat, which is a long time, I understand that. But the fact that I can get up to half Fortify in, I don't know, let's say 10, 15 seconds of combat is extremely strong. What this does is it takes off a lot of stress on a Barbarian build for generating Fortify. So what I did was I have Steadfast Berserker, was a random drop. I threw it on, 100% Fortify all the time with this. Because in 1 minute, you will 99.99% of the time always see this proc. And the one proc based on how strong your aspect is enough to fully fortify you with this construct skill, making it extremely strong. So that's the TLDR of the entire build. Like I said, you can see footage of me just dominating everything. Open world, dopamine's kind of the main XP farm at the moment, but it does fine in bosses, all of that good stuff. If you have any questions, most of it's going to be answered in this video or in the build guide. If not, just drop a comment in the video. I check pretty often and I will respond to as many as I possibly can. So that's going to conclude this amazing build. Let me know what you think. Try it out. I've already seen some really good feedback from the people I kind of nudged and said, hey, you should kind of try these interactions out, and they've said it's been working fantastic. It's hitting and checking all of the checks you need to for a awesome barbarian build. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe to the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.